Today I'm gonna talk about a very interesting camera. So this camera has a lot of features, that too at a very low price point. I am talking about Sony A33 SLT camera. So it's not a DSLR and it's not a mirrorless camera, but it looks like a DSLR and it behaves like a mirrorless camera. It is SLT, single lens translucent camera. This camera packs a lot of features. You can connect an external mic into this. You can also have a flip down screen if you want to do vlogging, and it swivels in different directions. So this is a very interesting camera and it can be brought now at a very low price point. We're going to discuss all the technical specifications, the photos taken with this camera, the sample videos with this camera, and whether you should buy this camera or not and at what price point. If you are new to my channel, consider subscribing it and don't forget to press the notification icon. So this is how the camera looks like. It's a really nicely made camera, pretty compact, not so heavy, and if you see from the side you have this AF/MF switch. So if you put it on MF, then the lens would stop autofocusing. And from the back it looks like this. So it has a tilt down screen, but you can rotate it in any direction. So you can use it for vlogging. If you want to use it with a tripod, you can use an L bracket plate. So you have these buttons and all, using which you can change different settings. And we have an electronic viewfinder similar to one you find in mirrorless camera on this camera. Since it is a SLT camera, you have a flash. You have this button if you want to open the flash. So this is how it looks like from the front. And from the top it looks like this. And right now I am having the 18-55mm kit lens. On the side you have this port where you can connect a microphone. Here you can connect a remote, and over here if you want to connect your camera to your computer, so you have the USB port and you also have an HDMI port as well. If I show the camera from the bottom, so the battery goes in here and the SD card also goes inside this. So you have only one card slot on this camera. On this side you don't have anything. So this is how the camera looks from different angles. This camera was launched in 2010, so it's roughly 13-year-old camera, and it has a 14 megapixel sensor inside it. 14 megapixel in my opinion is not very low and not very high either. You can take great images with 14 megapixel as well. It can record full HD videos, and the ISO range on this camera goes from 100 to 25,600. So the low light performance is quite good and quite decent on this camera. In the continuous mode it can do 7 frames per second, and the dynamic range is also pretty good on this camera. It's 12.8, not very low and not very high either, but a very good dynamic range. Beside that, this camera also has exposure bracketing, so you can combine different images at different exposure into a high dynamic range photo. But the best thing about this camera is you can connect an external microphone on the side of the camera. So if you want to make good cinematic videos, you want to record the audio as well, then this can be a very good camera for you. And since this camera has a flip down screen, so you can pretty much roam with it like this and you can do vlogging. If you are using some kind of a tripod, then you can connect this kind of a L bracket, and L bracket would be like this. So this screen will not be blocked, so you can still do vlogging and you can even make videos for YouTube sitting in front of the camera. The resolution of the screen is pretty good. It's 921 kilo dots, and the weight of the camera is pretty nice. It's around 500 grams, so not very heavy either. So you can easily hold it in your hand and do the vlogging. As is the case with most of the camera, the battery life is not that good, but it can take up to 300 images. But one really good thing that I liked about this camera was that there is no recording limit when it comes to movies. So if you have a really long SD card, so you can even record like 3-hour movie in this camera, and this camera can do full HD movies. Even in today's time, full HD movies can be a good choice. If you are a new YouTuber, you can record full HD movies and you can even upscale it to 4K and then put it on your YouTube channel. Now let me talk about the price point, because I have been talking about the price every now and then in this video, why this camera is a great choice at this price point. You can get this camera used for around 100 to 120 US dollar along with the kit lens. Because in this price bracket, if you look at other brands and second-hand camera, I don't think they will provide you this kind of a flip down screen and the mic input jack. Beside that, this camera also have sensor shift image stabilization inside it, so all your lenses would be stabilized. Even if you use a prime lens, 50mm lens, every lens would have stabilization. And this camera has Sony Alpha Minolta A mount, so you can use all the older lenses from the Minolta cameras in this camera and they would autofocus and work perfectly fine without a problem. But you cannot use the Sony E mount lenses on this camera because it has a A mount. E mount is for the Sony mirrorless camera, but these lenses can be used on the E mount camera if you have the adapter. Now let me put onto the screen the sample photos that I've taken with this camera, and I would say in good lighting situation it can take excellent images. So it looks like a mirrorless camera, but it is not a mirrorless camera, it's a SLT camera. I have another video on my channel explaining what exactly is a SLT camera. So basically the mirror that you have in the camera is a semi-transparent mirror, so it will let some of the light pass onto the focusing system to help in the autofocusing of the camera. So the mirror is not lifted as is the case with the DSLR. So when you take an image with the DSLR, the mirror moves from the way and the light hits the sensor and the image is captured, but in this case the mirror is fixed, it is semi-transparent, so some of the light would go through the mirror directly onto the sensor to take the image, but at the same time it will reflect some of the light onto the focusing system to help in the autofocusing of the camera. But the images are great even in low lighting situation. Since the ISO range is pretty good on this camera, I can see the photos are pretty nice, and 14 megapixel is not a very low resolution. You can take great images, you can bring large posters even with 14 megapixel sensor. Now I'm gonna put onto the screen the sample videos that I've taken with this camera. There is only one drawback that I see with this camera, that is when you are doing a video recording, this camera will not let you do the manual control in the movie. So you will not be able to choose your autofocus point. If you want to do the autofocus on a certain object, you cannot do that. So the camera will decide where it has to autofocus on its own. If it is like a large object in the frame, definitely most of the time it will be able to pick it. But if there are like multiple objects and you want to point it exactly at one point, then it can be a problem for you. So for those kind of situation, I recommend that you use this camera in manual focus mode. So with the manual focus mode, then you can override the autofocus and you can focus pretty much where you want. The audio that you are listening right now is from the built-in microphone on this camera. So the only drawback on this camera is that when you are recording the video, you cannot control the focus, so the camera will try to focus on its own. So that is one major drawback with this camera. However, if you are pretty large in the frame, then the camera will take care of the focusing. It will try to focus correctly on you. So definitely you can use this camera if you want to do YouTube video, or you can put this on manual focus and fix the focus somewhere and then do the video recording. However, if you look at the video quality, it is actually quite good. Let me try to focus close on these leaves and show you the kind of quality you can get with this camera. See how detailed and sharp the video looks. So the leaves are in focus and they look very sharp, and the background blur is also very good. Now the final question, should you buy this camera or not? So if you are looking for a hybrid camera that is somewhat like a DSLR and also somewhat like a mirrorless camera, because this camera has a OVF, so it feels like a mirrorless and it looks like a DSLR. So this can be a really good beginner camera for you, because you can get this camera used for 100 or 120 US dollar, which is a very cheap price for such a kind of features that you get with this camera. And with this camera you can pretty much do vlogging, since your face would be in front of the lens, so it will be easily able to keep your face in focus most of the time. And you can use some kind of L bracket for doing like YouTube kind of videos, using this front screen. Beside that, you can also connect a mic, so you can get really nice audio as well. And if you don't mind using manual focus, then even the cinematic videos can be done using this camera. Beside that, you also have sensor shift image stabilization. Usually the camera that costs around like 1000 or 2000 US dollar, they have that feature, but this $100 camera has all those features. So definitely with this price and this kind of feature, you cannot go wrong with this camera. So for a beginner, I can definitely recommend you this camera. Alright guys, I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the notification icon.